Victoria 3 was finally announced. It is not a joke. Or if it is, then I hope they tell us soon, because it's an awfully cruel joke, if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
Did you play Victoria 2, Kyle?
I did. And one thing I can say that I already don't like about, like, there's two things. Just looking at the screenshots. I know I already have opinions, right? The UI is dark. That's awesome. I like that. That's easy on the eyes. But it seems very like CK3, where CK3's UI was kind of clunky.
Yeah,
it's a
like,
minor
at the
complaint, but it
moment,
just looks a little...
we got 5 screenshots to base our entire opinions on here,
Pretty
and
much.
a little pre-rendered trailer thing. So keep this in mind. But for me, Victoria 3 has like kind of been the shining promised hope, the great white hope, if you will, the savior that might be from the just mediocrity of modern day Paradox. Because Victoria 1 was such a beautiful little thing. And when they made 2, they kind of, what was it? Like, the guy who was making it basically said that if this sells, if this earns its money back, I'll tattoo Victoria on my face or something. And he had to, because it earned them money. And the good thing is, they threw caution completely to the wind. They entered into that as just a loss program. They didn't expect to make money. They just went into it trying to make the best game they possibly could. And we ended up in this beautiful, tismy little simulator game where each goddamn individual citizen of a nation was simulated and would eventually just die of old age, or of the war, or plague, pestilence, or many of the myriad other things. It was such a beautiful game.
Yeah, it was really cool. I don't know. Like, the setting's interesting too, because you have like a lot of nations that are emerging. The industrial powers are coming about. Like, this is the prelude to the World War II era. So you got a lot of like cool things, but you also, at this point, there's still an opportunity for some of those little emergent nations to still play catch up with the big powers, and that's kind of what was appealing about this game. Playing as what was it, Thailand or Siam, and then or China, trying to get that shit back together, and then trying to actually like play the game was kind of cool.
I'm just Victoria. It's been a meme how like everybody's like, oh, please announce Victoria 3, because I think everyone is assuming the same thing, that Victoria was an almost pure passion project, and we're hoping that Victoria 3 will be the same thing. Now, God damn it. See, here's the thing, right? I don't want to start off being negative, because Victoria 3 to me could be the game that really redeems Paradox in my eyes. And some of the early screenshots, I actually quite like what I see. They've got population numbers. It's not just a number, it's actually a number,
1.86 million or something like that. Growth is 22,000. They're losing to migration. Yeah. Like, it feels like there's actually people there. Because I always hate those abstract numbers like 3 people live here. It's like, what?
Yep, population 3. Oh, I see.
Okay.
That's great.
Quite the city.
Hold on. Is my live chat not working again? No, it's not. Right, hold on a second.
Just refresh the page and then open it again. That normally does it.
There we go. Right, I was wondering why it's like, we've been streaming for a while, nobody's commented, that's odd.
Oh, there have been plenty of comments.
That'd be weird. But yeah, they're just looking at the very first screenshot, right? You have one province selected, Leinster, British market. You got infrastructure. You've got infrastructure usage. How much of that is currently being used? You've got market access. You've got GDP. You've got taxation. You've got expenses. You've got peasantry. You've got the struggling classes. You've got the middle classes, the secure classes. You've got the growth. You've got migration. You have tons of different buildings. You've got turmoil. Man, this is looking like Victoria.
Hopefully.
Like, I'm almost surprised.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting it to be like some sort of amalgamation of Europa dumbed down or something like that.
Right?
But it looks to be quite interesting. And I do like how the provinces are much larger. I think that was one of the things that was Victoria 2. I don't remember how big they are, because memory is like really old on that game now. But it feels like the provinces are much larger, and that makes sense because it's an industrial age, so you don't have like little microscopic territories like you do in Europa.
Mm-hmm. You've got the markets. You've got, and again, the next screenshot too, you see the size, right? Most underproduced 6.83 thousand, presumably tons of grain. Like, yes, big simulation numbers. Not like I'm producing 2 units of grain. I need 3 units to feed my populace.
Yeah, that was bad. Now, question is, how badly will it lag late game? Oh,
yeah, that's the
God.
question. Like, there's a lot of simulation here, and they've got the pop types as well. They've got the not just pop type divided by religion, but they've got like by rural folk, by industrial folk, the intelligentsia, the bourgeoisie, the industrialists, the landed gentry. They've got. I mean, I'm actually a little bit hopeful now. Because we've got so little to base it on. I'm just going to say that right now, I'm liking the details. The look of it looks very CK3, which is not bad. I mean, I like the look. It's decent. It's a little bit dark, which is good.
I mean, it makes sense to recycle the procedural character generation system they had from that game and import it in here. Why make something new when you already have something that works?
My only real worry at the moment is right now it looks like it's got all the complexity we want, but the very first piece of news I saw about Victoria 3 was a Eurogamer interview who asked the question, so, how are you going to streamline this? And the Paradox dude was like, yeah, right, so, yes, of course we're going to streamline this. Like, no.
There is the thing about the word streamline is it's often something that games should get, but they get it the wrong way. Like, the game shouldn't be obtuse and annoying to access different buttons. Like, if I want to access my population, it should be pretty streamlined. It should be pretty easy to use and understand and read all the complex features. The problem with streamlining nowadays is it's not streamlining the usability or the user interface. It's streamlining mechanics to make them simpler for idiots.
Yeah, and of course, one of the things he said too was like, "Oh, we're really worried about information overload for the player."
That was what made Victoria 2 so scary when I first played it. As I was like, "What's this economy? What's happening?"
Oh yeah, like the thing is, I don't disagree in theory here. Right? Grand strategy games can be imposing, but usually when you get into them, they're a lot easier than they look. So, in theory, I get it. But every time I hear Paradox go on about streamlining, about making their games more accessible, I break out in fucking hives.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem is like, let's talk about modern Paradox games for just a sec, because we do need to kind of, I think, base our opinion on that, because that also is an indicator for what happened and what's bad going on in Paradox. Like Imperator. That was a disaster, right? And they pulled the plug on that. Honestly, if that means more resources go towards the development and future-proofing of Victoria 3, as, like, if it's good, that'll be worth it. If it wasn't, well, then it was literally pointless. And the other thing is, Leviathan, bad. Nemesis, bad. Like, every expansion lately for all these games is bad. The last expansion for Hearts of Iron was just a flavor pack. The new one coming out isn't even, like, ready. So, like, currently they don't have a particularly good reputation. They've been dropping the ball again and again and again and again. So, hopefully that their bad luck streak's going to run out.
Yeah, that's the problem, because we can sit here and theorize all we want, but the fact is, Paradox has had a really bad run now for a long time. Their little gangster thing, like, what was it?
Oh god, I forgot about that.
Sin or something?
Empire Sin, and then there's BTM, don't forget about that.
A VTM as well, that absolute disaster. Well, you can also say, like, okay, these are outside studios, right? Well, technically, yeah, but Paradox has gotten its tentacles in so many studios now.
I feel like that argument's not particularly valid, because there's a reoccurring instance where everything that is failing is associated with Paradox. Clearly, in my mind, there's some sort of connection there.
Because that is the problem that we need to return to. Paradox's track record as of late You've got Imperator Rome, which was the most blatant case of not having any idea what your audience wants we've almost ever seen. Then we're coming hot off the heels of Leviathan, which is now the lowest scored game on Steam. It was so universally hated, even the usual, like, diehard defenders couldn't find any reason to defend it. And then, of course, you got Vampire Bloodlines 2, another unmitigated disaster. Like, is Paradox truly ready to make Victoria 3 now?
That's a good question. And that's where, like, originally, when you told me about Victoria 3, I was like, oh, hell yeah. But then, reality sunk in, and I'm like, wait, should I be excited? Or should I be more cautious with this? Because, I don't know, they don't have a very good track record right now. And while I'd love to jump on board with this, I really don't see any reason why we should, like, get super, like, what's the word? Hype train? Hype trains are bad in general, but excited or interested. We should be definitely skeptical on this one, for sure. Because track records are important. I mean, look at CD Projekt Red. They had a great track record. But then if you listen to all the bad stuff that was happening with Cyberpunk, it was very alarming. And people started to second-guessing that and started to get off that quote-unquote hype train. I think here you kind of have to do the same thing. You kind of have to be a little bit more cautiously interested, maybe is the correct way of phrasing it.
Mm-hmm. Because that was my too. I had the exact same reaction. It was like Victoria 3. Oh my god, yes, 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 yes. And then I start to think about it, and I'm like, God, Jesus. And you start getting worried. And I read through the whole article, the interview as well, where a lot of what he's saying makes sense, but a lot of it's also kind of worrying. Because apparently it's the guy from Stellaris who's also saying that whilst they're going to focus a lot on the pops, which is great, they're also saying that, okay, we're going to kind of shove military down the scale again, too. And this is the thing. This is the thing that has been annoying me for so long. Back in the day, whenever there was a sequel to something, we always naturally expected more.
Yes, and
we would get more mechanics, better gameplay, better graphics, better controls, better interface, more. These days, and that was the problem with Imperator Rome as well, we were expected to sit there like clapping little seals and just accept a downgraded Europa Universalis.
And we were supposed to be patient for it to be patched into a game. That's the same problem. Yeah. What you just said here, is alarming to me, because that means they're not going in to develop a effective combat system. They're just going to be lazy with it, and they'll just DLC, free LC, whatever lingo they want to use, a patch later on down the road. So really, we're just like in the case of CK3, just like in the case of Hearts of Iron 4 and every other Paradox game lately, we're buying another early access game, but they're not even, like, being honest. I wouldn't be half as upset about it if they would just be honest at the cover and just say early access, because then I know what I'm getting into. But with Paradox, you really are just buying early access games. And I feel like that's a little misleading to the public.
Yeah, that is the danger. They need to finally, and I'm kind of hoping that Imperator maybe gave them that wake-up call, and because this is their first big in-house production again after that, they maybe gave them that wake-up call to go like, okay, we can't just half-ass it. The next game we make, we've actually got to make a new game instead of just a shadow of a previous one.
Yeah, it should be an improvement. I don't know. You, like, what you said is very much what I agree with, especially when it comes to, like, my views on game development. Like, when you make a sequel to a game, like, making the first game is always kind of like the easier game, because it's like, okay, you don't really have to worry about improving stuff. But the sequel to a franchise or another game needs to have improvements and needs to be better than the previous edition or rendition of it. Because why buy the new game? You need to incentivize players to buy the new game. There's got to be something new in it, then there's also got to be something improved. You don't just change things for the sake of changing, but look at what's weak, what's suffering. Did your map suck? Did your gunplay suck? Improve that. And just the fact that they gave up on combat is just, like, combat in Victoria could be so interesting. Like, think of it. You got, like, tribals fighting, like, industrial rising empires all the way to World War I. Like, this game covers World War I. So we're going to get to the Great War period. So
Mhm.
there should be a huge change of combat, both in naval warfare, ground warfare, and revolutionary air warfare, because these things are new, and these things, like, for example, you like that one game, the early access game, Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, very promising. Like, this game is basically that. It's like 1800s, those little fucking what do you call them, ironclads, all the way to dreadnoughts.
Yep.
So there should be, the gameplay should evolve as well. It shouldn't just be stagnant. And that's my fear, because I think that's also a missing component from these Paradox games. Like, the gameplay should evolve as your society and culture advances technologically.
Yeah. Like, I don't want Victoria 3 to just be, as they put in their little blurb, a society simulator. Right, that should be the focus. Great. But you made the society simulator in Victoria 2. I want more now. Give me more mechanics, more complexity, more fully fleshed out stuff. Like, there's no reason why Hearts of Iron 4 should lack stuff that Hearts of Iron 3 had, and so on, you know?
Yeah, it's fine to, like, remove something that wasn't working and then supplement it with a new solution. That's fine.
Sure.
But to outright remove it altogether and then patch it in as a DLC later on, even if it is free, because I do want to point out that a lot of the mechanical changes are all free. They're just slapped on to promote the DLC as well. So that's when they're released at the same time. But I think that's just kind of scummy, because it's like, well, we really didn't, this game really wasn't done when you gave it to us.
That is the thing. All we can do now is cross our fingers and hope that Victoria 3 will be a return to greatness instead of another mild disappointment.